just like you're doing. All right, so Tatum and KD is what's right with the sport, right? I mean, they put on a show yesterday, and thank God they overshadowed what's wrong with the sport. And one of the things that's wrong with the sport is, a clown like Kyrie Irving. And he went back to Boston yesterday, and he didn't play well, 19.6 assists on 8 of 18. And I thought that he tried to take over a little bit there with Durant sitting. I think it was towards the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, where he tried to do stuff by himself, but he didn't play well. 19.6 assists, 8 of 18. If he had played as well as the sidekick to Durant as Jaylen Brown did to Jason Tatum, maybe Brooklyn ends up winning that game. He got booed as expected. Afterwards, here's what Kyrie Irving had to say. And by now you're familiar with it, but let's hear what Kyrie once again had to say in regards to the fans in Boston booing him.
Be like that for the rest of my career coming in here. So, it's like the scoring girlfriend, just wants an explanation on why I left, but still hoping for, a text back. And I'm just like, yeah, it's fun while it lasted. And I think that's the relationship that makes it fun. But the reality is that I'm just grateful for my time here in Boston. Everybody in the front office, everybody in that locker room treated me well. Still have lasting relationships in our league, that extend as a brotherhood for us. And we still remain close.
All right, so that's Kyrie Irving. I don't deny that, he's close with some of the guys on the team because that's around the league. I mean, Kyrie Irving seems to be beloved by other players. I don't care. I mean, from what I've seen, he's the worst teammate in the history of maybe organized sports, not just the NBA. But in regards to the comments directed towards the Boston fans, I don't think they want him back. I mean, they've done fine, without him. I know I didn't want him back in Boston. I wouldn't want him anywhere near my teams. And think about that. That's got to be kind of an indictment to you and where you sit on the list of all time greats. Can you be? And he's not a top 75 player. And those that voted on it did not classify him as a top 75 player, even though there was an outcry that he should be a top 75 player. But can you think of a top 75 player, or can you be the most skilled point guard ever, as Chauncey Billups referred to him as, or a top 4 point guard in the history of the sport, as Andre Iguodala called him, and be in the prime of your career and a fan base doesn't even want you there? If you became a free agent this year, Boston maybe needing a point guard, so they need one. And I don't think they'd want you back. They'd want you gone. I mean, that's an indictment to how good you are. If you're a top 75 player, you're one of the skilled players in the history of the sport, teams will knock each other over to get you. Think about a fan base. Fan base is rooted for Pac-Man Jones just because he was wearing their uniform. Fans will root for anybody. Yet I don't think they would accept Kyrie Irving back. And by the way, since Kyrie left to form his super team in Brooklyn, by the way, it's not like he formed a super team and it's okay, I'm going to join a bunch of buddies and, one of them's a top 50 player of all time. I mean, he joined one of the 15 to 20 best players in the history of the sport. Okay. So it's and plus James Harden was supposed to be one of the great scorers in the history of the sport. Even with that said, so he left to form a super team. It created an uproar. He's teaming with Kevin Durant. Well, since that point, I went and looked it up earlier today. The Celtics are 210 and 123 since Kyrie left. The Nets are 209 and 115 since Kyrie joined them. And by the way, the Celtics have won 2 playoff series during that time frame. The Nets have only won 1. So Boston has more regular season wins, less regular season losses, and more postseason wins since Kyrie left and joined Brooklyn. I don't necessarily think they're crying over spilled milk here, Kyrie. And again, this year, on top of all that, Boston's 6.5 games ahead of them in the standings. And I'm watching NBA Countdown yesterday on ABC, and all their analysts are saying, I think Boston's got a better shot of going to the NBA Finals than the Nets. That's despite Kyrie getting the benefit of playing with, one of the 15, 20 best players in the history of the sport in Kevin Durant. And how does Kyrie not expect to get booed? I mean, he didn't play well when he was in Boston. He said he was staying, then changed his mind. He quit during the postseason. He stomped on the team logo. It's okay, well, the Boston fan hasn't forgotten. Well, you haven't forgotten either. You're the one that stomped on the logo last year, less than a calendar year ago. And by the way, you called an entire city racist. So you can do that, and then the city doesn't have the right to like fire back at you? I mean, that's absurd. And that's, again, the lack of self-awareness. Who's acting like the scorned girlfriend? And again, he said fans want an explanation. Again, I'm not sure anybody wants one. Even if you gave one, do you think anybody would understand it? Understand what he's saying? He just strings together a bunch of big words nobody can understand. It's like a word salad. In regards to his player on the floor, I mean, again, it's the same thing I've been saying for years. He's a globetrotter. He doesn't impact winning. He's basically no better than John Wall. He just happened to get lucky playing with LeBron James. Then a loaded Celtics team, and now KD. He's never not been supported by great teams or teammates outside of his first couple of years in Cleveland, where they also didn't win. I mean, if he's the most skilled point guard of all time, don't you think he'd impact winning to some extent? I saw the stat yesterday. I put it up there on Twitter, at Termine Radio, at TERMINE Radio. Brooklyn is 5-11 when Kyrie plays this year. 5-11, including 1-9 in his last 10 games. So they're one of the worst teams in the NBA when Kyrie Irving plays. 1-9 in the last 10 games. They're essentially like they're worse than the Rockets. They're worse than the Thunder. They're worse than the Magic. They're worse than the Pistons. They are literally one of the worst teams in the NBA when Kyrie Irving plays this year. They're 5-11 with him this year. They're 1-9 in the last 10 games with Kyrie Irving. All right, great. He was fantastic against the Bucks. Good for him. That's one game. All right. They're 5-11 when he plays this year. And I got a little feedback yesterday when I tweeted that. A Nets writer, I don't need to give his name out, but he said, well, 12 of the 16 games have come without Kevin Durant, and many games came while the team was dealing with James Harden angling his way out and not giving his best efforts. The other came with Kyrie alone. So that's what this Nets writer fired back with. My response to that would be who cares if KD wasn't there? Who cares if Harden's, attitude wasn't, 100%? And he wasn't mentally checked in. The main skill of a point guard, and we talked about this at the time of Chauncey Billups' comments a couple of weeks ago, the main skill of a point guard is to make his teammates better. And who should better understand that than Nets fans, right? Nets fans should understand that better than anybody. Those rosters like that Jason Kidd was on, they didn't have great supporting cast, and Kidd took them all the way to the NBA Finals in back-to-back years. Because that's what a point guard does. A point guard lifts everybody around him and makes him better. And that's not an attribute that Kyrie Irving has, which precludes him from being one of the more skilled point guards in the history of the sport. You think Kidd is going 5-11? And Kidd's not even Magic Johnson. You think Magic Johnson's going 5-11? And 1-9 the last 10 games? You think Isaiah Thomas is doing that? Or is Isaiah Thomas finding a way? All right, 855-NBA Jump, 855-622-5867. Again, they're 10-13 when Kyrie and KD play together without James Harden since they came together a couple of years ago. Isaiah Thomas or Magic Johnson playing with Kevin Durant? Honestly, think about that. Are Isaiah Thomas, Jason Kidd, is John Stockton, Steph Curry playing with Kevin Durant and through 23 games, being 3 games under 500, 10-13? The answer to that is no. All right, 855-NBA Jump, 855-622-5867. Maybe Kyrie should, be more concerned about his team's wins and losses and his status, for the games and his play than he should be about some fans booing him. All right, 855-NBA Jump. Let's hit Paul.